Welcome everyone to today's checkup for the upcoming Gigantamax Lapras Battle Day. My name is Antarcticuno, and I'm the doctor around these parts. I make videos discussing the finer details and mechanics for Dynamax battles. So, if that is of interest to you, please consider subscribing down below to stay up to date with the latest news and analysis. Without further ado, in order to best prepare for the return of Gigantamax Lapras, we'll need to dive deeper into the available Pokemon in the game, their strengths, their weaknesses, and generally how best to utilize your Stardust and Max Particles to ensure your success. Before we get ahead of ourselves though, a quick disclaimer. While my videos are intended to lay out information in a fact-oriented manner, the way I'll be calculating damage does make some assumptions. It's impossible for me to know your Pokemon's IVs, level, etc., and so instead, I'll be using some generalizations around stats like attack and defense. The formula shown on screen is the actual Pokemon Go damage calculator. Notably, the attack and defense stats used in-game utilize a mechanic called the CP factor, which scales your and the boss Pokemon's stats according to their level. For my calculations, I'll be using the base stats of all Pokemon, including the boss. This provides a mostly accurate gauge for the ratios here, but of course your exact damage expectations will vary. Perhaps in a future video I'll explain at length how some of these calculations work, but for now, know that the damage calculations used are rough approximations. To start with, let's talk a little bit about Lapras and its role in the Dynamax metagame. Gigantamax Lapras offers a few features that make it a worthwhile effort, outside of the great experience and Stardust bonuses available to all Gigantamax battles. Firstly, with a whopping 277 stamina, this gives Lapras plenty of hit points to throw around when using Max Spirit. If you weren't aware, Max Spirit uses the Pokemon's total available hit points to calculate the amount of HP healed. So, the more hit points the Pokemon possesses, the more effective its uses of Max Spirit. Additionally, because of its Water-Ice typing, Lapras can match up very well against certain Dynamax bosses, especially those that carry mostly water or ice attacking moves. This is in spite of a relatively frail defense stat of 174, far lower than would be ideal for a true tank in the metagame. Lastly, Lapras is the only Gigantamax Pokemon capable of using an Ice-type move, Gmax Resonance. This isn't to say that it is the strongest Ice-type Dynamax Pokemon, but the power scale boost of Gigantamax moves allows it to surpass other currently available Ice-type Dynamax Pokemon, like Articuno or Cryogonal. And with the positives must come some negatives. As mentioned previously, Lapras will really shine in certain situations, like when facing down a Dynamax boss that is quadruple weak to ice, or when the Dynamax boss can mostly use water or ice moves, which it resists well. Otherwise, it's best relegated for the back of the team, where it can switch in safely during a Dynamax phase to drop some heals when needed. And, while Lapras has returned for 10km eggs this season, generally this Pokemon can be a bit difficult to grind Candy and Candy XLs for, both being necessary requirements for powering up its CP and Max moves. All in all, Lapras is still a good pickup, especially for newer trainers. Let's next discuss some of the better Pokemon to bring in to stand up to this harmonizing Plesiosaur. Gigantamax Rillaboom. Gigantamax Rillaboom is the best attacker for Lapras. Its 239 attack stat is nothing to scoff at, and coupled with the Gigantamax power boost to its Gmax drum solo, this makes for one mean ape. It also possesses a 0.5 second fast attack in Scratch that, unlike its Dynamax counterpart, Gigantamax Rillaboom can utilize without changing its max attack. Even better is the fact that it resists water attacks and also possesses a 225 stamina stat. This makes Rillaboom an all-around threat capable of hitting hard, damage sponging, and potentially dropping half-decent max spirits. As a grass type, Rillaboom will be susceptible to Lapras' ice moves, so if encountering a Lapras with an ice-targeted or spread move, be sure to keep Rillaboom off the field until the Dynamax phase. Overall, Gigantamax Rillaboom is a great choice here and a spectacular showing so soon after its debut in June. Gigantamax Machamp. Gigantamax Machamp is another heavy hitter for Lapras. In comparison with Rillaboom, Gigantamax Machamp is much more specialized, as it is less able to resist hits from Lapras, and doesn't possess a defense or stamina stat that seems worthwhile to invest into for max guard or max spirit. Furthermore, it lacks a 0.5 second fast attack and so must make do with counter, a 1 second fast attack. This is certainly not to discredit Gigantamax Machamp's raw power, as it only trails Rillaboom by a few damage points, but if you choose to use this as your attacker, be careful not to let it get worn down too quickly. Gigantamax Toxtricity. If Gigantamax Machamp received critiques on frailty, Gigantamax Toxtricity has it worse. Gigantamax Toxtricity deals less damage than Machamp or Rillaboom, while taking even more damage from all of Lapras' attacks. Not to mention that Candy can be a real pain to grind for this Pokemon, almost necessitating you hatch 10-kilometer eggs hoping to get a Toxel. On a high note, Toxtricity does possess a nice 0.5 second fast attack move in Spark, which, unlike the previously mentioned Gigantamax Pokemon, means you don't have to choose between speed and type effectiveness, which is certainly nice. Overall, Toxtricity is a hard hitter that should really only be considered if you have the resources and dedication to make it work. Gigantamax Venusaur. Next up is Gigantamax Venusaur, which marks a significant depreciation in damage for it and all upcoming Pokemon mentioned. While 492 damage is not bad per se, the fact that in comparison to the top attacker, Gigantamax Rillaboom, you're sacrificing about 100 damage per attack. Where Gigantamax Venusaur can shine, however, is in the versatility department. Venusaur is able to resist attacks due to its grass typing, a trait it shares with Rillaboom. But, with more solid defenses, Venusaur can take more of those resisted hits than its ape counterpart. Along with a great 0.5 second attacking move in Vine Whip, and in the right matchups, Venusaur can remain on the field much longer than Rillaboom. Urshifu Rapid Strike and Single Strike. Dynamax Urshifu represents an interesting use case. Both forms will want to use Counter as the fast attack to be able to use Max Knuckle, which is their most effective damage in the Max phase. However, in the case of Single Strike style, this robs it of the ability to use a 0.5 second fast attack in Sucker Punch, and by extension, the utility of Single Strike as an attacker. On the flip side, Rapid Strike doesn't lose much by going with Counter, and does benefit from its water typing being able to resist water and ice moves, leading it to be the slightly more optimal choice here between the two. Keep in mind that as a mythical Pokemon, grinding candy for these bears can be challenging, and with the future uncertain for how their Gigantamax forms will become available, it might make sense to forego investing in them for now unless you have a strong attachment to these Pokemon. Zapdos. Carrying on with the legendary Pokemon, Zapdos is another perfectly fine option if you have the resources. Zapdos suffers from many of the same weaknesses that the Gigantamax grass Pokemon Rillaboom suffers from, namely being an ice weakness and inability to tank particularly well. And while it can get access to the 0.5 second fast attack in Thundershock, this move can only be obtained by using an elite TM. Coupled with the difficulty in farming candy, and this makes Zapdos a niche pick best suited for diehard Cantonian bird enthusiasts. Raikou. They say that lightning doesn't strike twice, but to be honest, Raikou defies that idiom. A near mirror copy to Zapdos, Raikou suffers from a lot of the same pain points when it comes to investment. It provides less raw damage when compared to its Lightning Bird relative. Where Zapdos excels in raw damage, however, Raikou is a bit more well-rounded, as it does not suffer any weaknesses to Lapras' attacks, and thus has better survivability on average. A bright spot for the Thundercat is its access to the 0.5 second fast attack Thundershock without an elite TM. Invest wisely if you're going to go with this one. Rillaboom. Dynamax Rillaboom, like its Gigantamax counterpart, is blessed with some fine-looking stats. Much of the same pros and cons can be levied here. Rillaboom has some resistances, some weaknesses, and overall decent bulk to stick around, as well as a very workable attack stat. Max Overgrowth pales in comparison to Gmax Drum Solo, but that's still more than fine for the introductory player, which is really where I expect Dynamax Rillaboom to be a good match. The readily available candy for Grookey's Dynamax form makes this a good choice for the novice Dynamax battler, but with a few more Gigantamaxes under your belt, I expect Dynamax Rillaboom to retire gracefully with time. Machamp. Similar to the comparison between Gigantamax Rillaboom and Dynamax Rillaboom, much of the same applies here with Gigantamax Machamp and Dynamax Machamp. A strict attacker, Dynamax Machamp is a great option for new players lacking Gigantamax options. One aspect that may make Dynamax Machamp appealing is the ability to trigger Dynamax Machamp's evolution requirement via trading, effectively making the full evolution from Dynamax Machamp to Dynamax Machamp 25 candy, as opposed to the 125 candy normally. This can be a huge game changer if you need that candy to power up its CP or max knuckle attack. Passimian. Dynamax Passimian holds a special place on this list due to its ability to mostly go toe-to-toe with Dynamax Machamp. Its stat spread is nearly identical to Machamp, with a slightly lower attack stat. That being said, it is a single-stage Pokemon which again can be tremendous for those without Gigantamax options. The cherry on top here for these players is that a free Dynamax Passimian will be provided in the lead-up research, so getting what is essentially a Dynamax Machamp for free cannot be overlooked. Zacian. Zacian and its sibling Zamazenta are some of the newest players to the scene, but both have clearly made an impact. In Zacian's case, it blends very good bulk with a monstrous attack stat. So monstrous in fact that even with neutral coverage with its steel-type Behemoth Blade, Zacian can still deal respectable damage. With its exceptional typing, it can resist half of the moves that Lapras can throw at it. While its primary function is clearly attacking, don't sleep on Zacian as a roll compressor able to stick around longer than its contemporaries. Zamazenta. And while we're talking about crown forms, we have to give credit where credit is due and talk about Zamazenta. Steel type is a real asset here, providing plenty of resistances to Ice, Dragon, and Normal type moves. Zamazenta's defense stat is off the charts at 292, making even neutral hits feel like they're resisted as well. But the fun doesn't stop there. Zamazenta has a unique ability to start the battle with a shield so long as you've unlocked Max Guard. Taken to its highest level, and any shield on Zamazenta will usually require over 2 hits to break. This allows Zamazenta to pull aggro throughout the entire battle, proving that sometimes defense is the best offense. Shuckle. Despite its meme status, Shuckle may prove to have a niche here in the Dynamax format. Looking at the raw damage received, Shuckle also bodies most attacks, and would be able to keep a shield up through multiple attacks, similar to Zamazenta. There are differences here worth noting, of course. Shuckle lacks any 0.5 second moves and must settle for the 1 second rock throw. The main kicker though is that despite its legendary 396 defense stat, it is let down by its 85 stamina stat, meaning that Shuckle cannot consistently survive the first phase of battle before the first Dynamax phase. That phase is marked by a lack of shields, with the exception of Zamazenta, and thus Shuckle would have to rely on its pitiful HP stat. After that first phase, however, Shuckle can begin to shine, putting up numbers very similar to the shield dog. Suicune. Unsurprisingly, Suicune finds its way onto the list of strong defenders. It resists most of Lapras' moves and commands a respectable defense and stamina stat, which lend themselves well to powering up Max Guard or Max Spirit. Unfortunately, it does not possess a 0.5 second fast attack, and so it must settle for Extra Sensory or Snarl, which both take 1 second to cool down. And, like most legendary Pokemon, one of the main drawbacks is the candy cost to power up. But, if you happen to have grinded for Suicune candy previously, or are a Ursine level Suicune fan, this Pokemon can be a great option against Lapras. Metagross. Metagross is one of the original Dynamax Pokemon and has matured well even a year after the format's inception. This is due in no small part to the addition of Fury Cutter to its Fast Attack Learn set, finally providing Metagross with a 0.5 second fast attack. Metagross's defining features are its great typing, which brings nice resistances, as well as a respectable defense stat and strong attack stat. This Pokemon has historically been a great investment and continues to be a dependable pick for the upcoming Lapras battles. Blastoise. Blastoise, either in Gigantamax or Dynamax form, is another good choice for tanking against Lapras. Because of Gigantamax Blastoise's admittedly low-performing attack stat and forced inclusion of Gmax Cannonade, a water-type max attack, their performance on the offensive side is almost identical. Notably, Blastoise has two great 0.5 second fast attack options in Bite and Water Gun. It also has great candy availability, and cannot be knocked out easily by any of Lapras' moves. However, Blastoise is more frail than some of the aforementioned Pokemon, like Suicune or Zamazenta, so Blastoise is increasingly becoming more of a budget pick rather than a real standout in the format. Gigantamax Lapras. In a fun twist of fate, Gigantamax Lapras can be used to damage sponge against Gigantamax Lapras. As mentioned earlier in the video, Lapras does not possess a particularly high defense stat, leading it to be generally too frail to properly tank in most matchups. However, in this case, Lapras resists most of its own moves and possesses a few other upsides, notably being its access to two 0.5 second fast moves in Psywave and Water Gun, as well as a healthy stamina stat for launching life-saving Max Spirits. This is another good budget inclusion, assuming you plan to do a few Lapras on Saturday. Blissey. As the #1 healer in the game, we have to talk about Blissey. It has a whopping 496 stamina stat that redefines what it means to be a healer. With access to the 0.5 second fast attack Pound, Blissey is a natural choice for many players, and for good reason. One caveat to note about Blissey is that it is an exceptional damage sponger, but not necessarily tank. There is nuance here that I will likely explore in future videos, but the general disclaimer is that Blissey is not best in show when it comes to drawing fire away from teammates, as its defense stat is too frail to always guarantee shields between Dynamax phases. Consider this before moving to power up Max Guard on Blissey. Gigantamax Snorlax. Gigantamax Snorlax performs similar to Blissey in almost all regards, for better and worse. While it also touts a titanic 330 stamina stat, this is a significant departure from the heals that Blissey can provide. Snorlax makes up for this though with a decently powerful, hard-hitting Gigantamax move, Gmax Replenish, that outperforms any damage that Blissey might hope to achieve. Where Blissey focuses more as a passive healer and potential damage sponge or tank, Snorlax has a bit more flexibility to invest into offense as well. Given the fact that Snorlax and Blissey share the same defense stat, however, do not expect Snorlax to perform exceptionally as a traditional tank that draws aggro for teammates. Its shields can break in certain matchups, leading to teammates becoming exposed to targeted attacks. Wailord. As the newest addition to the damage sponging category, Wailord is admittedly disappointing. While it does sport a water typing, which is greatly beneficial for resistances, Wailord is sabotaged by its balloon-thin defense stat of 87, nearly half of Snorlax and Blissey. As a result, Wailord ends up taking more damage on average from all moves, even resisted ones, which is disappointing to say the least. As such, Wailord fans may still find a use for it as a healer and occasional attacker, but I do not foresee Wailord maintaining much longevity in this format, especially given the high cost to evolve one from a Dynamax Wailmer and to power up its CP and max moves. And that's a wrap! Thanks for joining me today to discuss some of the options and counters for Gigantamax Lapras. I hope this proved insightful to you, and if it did, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more Dynamax-related analysis videos. Till next time, friends.